There are people who should have died. It's not a figure of speech. It's literally what doctors said afterward. A woman fell from a building, a man was swallowed alive by a whale, another received an electric shock that would stop any heart. And even so, all of them are alive today to tell the story. What you're about to see here is not lottery luck. It's something far beyond that. I'm going to tell you 8 real cases of people who were placed in situations where the chance of survival was practically zero, and even so, in some inexplicable way, they managed to make it out the other side. Some of these cases you may have already heard about, others I'm sure you've never seen at all. And the craziest part is that when you put all these cases together, you'll notice a pattern that will make you rethink what you understand as luck. Stay until the end because the last case will leave you speechless. Let's start with one of the most documented cases of recent years, the case of Emma Scholes. It was an ordinary morning until a scream shattered the silence. "Mom, there's a fire!" In seconds, everything changed. Emma ran down the stairs, her heart racing, and found what no mother should ever see: flames consuming every corner of the house, while her children were trapped, terrified, cornered by the fire. Without thinking twice, she pulled them, one by one, and ran to the door. But when she opened it, the fresh air rushed in and fueled the flames even more. A violent explosion hit her back. The pain was unbearable, tearing, but she didn't stop. Even injured, she managed to get her children safely outside. Anyone would have stayed there. Anyone would have given up at that moment. But Emma didn't. There were still children inside. The staircase was completely engulfed in flames. The heat was suffocating, the air almost impossible to breathe. Every step was like walking through hell itself. Even so, she went up, because in that moment, nothing else mattered except them. Upstairs, she found more children and managed to get them out of that chaotic scene. Miraculously, they were alive. But then came the worst thought. Her youngest daughter was still inside. With her body already devastated by the flames, without strength to even stand, Emma began to crawl back. She entered the room, and there was her daughter, alive, scared, alone. Emma gathered what little energy she had left, struggled to stand up, took the baby in her arms, and headed back toward the stairs, shielding her with her own body from the heat and flames. Everyone survived. Everyone was safe. But Emma did not come out unscathed. Her body was completely covered in severe burns. As soon as she reached the ground, she fainted. When the rescuers arrived, the pain was so intense that she had to be sedated immediately. In the ICU, her life hung by a thread. It took about 40 liters of fluid to keep her organs functioning. Days turned into weeks, surgeries, skin grafts, a long, painful, and uncertain process. But against all odds, she survived. And not only did she survive, she came back. Today, Emma carries deep scars, permanent marks from that day. The pain still exists in many ways, but none of that stopped her from remaining present, active, and strong in her children's lives. Because in the end, that decision changed everything. Now, the second case is different, very different. Michael Packard is a lobster diver from Massachusetts in the United States. In June 2021, he was diving at about 14 meters deep to collect lobsters when he felt a huge impact, and suddenly everything went dark. He had been swallowed by a humpback whale. Not attacked, not bitten, swallowed, like Jonah, but for real. Humpback whales don't have teeth. They filter water to eat small fish. What happened was that the whale was hunting, and Michael was in the wrong place at the wrong time. The whale opened its mouth, and he went in by accident. Michael said in interviews that in the first second,
He thought he was trapped in a net. Then, when he started to feel the muscular movement around his body, he understood what had happened. He said he thought, "This is the end. I'm going to die in here." He was trapped for almost 40 seconds. Then the whale surfaced, shook its head, and Michael was thrown back into the ocean. His assistant, who was on a nearby boat, saw everything and pulled him out quickly. The injuries were serious but not fatal. Broken bones, damaged tissues, but nothing that took his life. He recovered completely. Researchers who studied the case said it is extremely rare, probably the first documented time an adult human was swallowed by a humpback whale and survived. There are historical records of similar cases, but never with photographic confirmation and witnesses like in Michael's case. What saved him? His size. Humpback whales have a chamber in their mouth called a throat pouch, but it is not wide enough for an adult human to pass through the throat. Michael was too big to be truly swallowed, but that didn't make the suffocation any less real. Any second longer in there and he would have died from lack of air.
The third case happened in India in 2025, and it's the kind of story that sounds made up, but has complete documentation. Vishwas Kumar Ramesh, a name that went down in history in an almost unbelievable way. The plane crashed in a brutal way, without warning, without a chance. In a matter of seconds, everything turned into destruction, structures breaking apart, fire spreading, bodies being thrown, a scenario where survival simply does not exist. But it did. Vishwas was inside, in the middle of the impact, in the middle of total collapse. And the most shocking part comes now. He was not found unconscious. He was not pulled out unresponsive. He was not trapped waiting for rescue. He walked out. Yes, walking. With his body marked, injured, with clear signs of trauma, but conscious, moving, breathing, alive. Imagine the scene. Rescue teams expecting to find only wreckage, and suddenly they see a man emerging from the remains of the plane, staggering, as if he had crossed the impossible. This is not just rare, it is practically impossible. Because in accidents like this, the impact causes severe trauma instantly, fractures, internal injuries, immediate unconsciousness. But he not only survived, he had the strength to walk out of there on his own legs. Every detail of this story defies logic. Where he was, the exact moment, the way his body reacted, everything indicates that he should not be there, alive. And yet, he was. The only survivor. While everyone around him didn't have the same chance, he walked out of the chaos, carrying on his body the marks of something no one should endure. And that makes us think. How many invisible variables exist in a single second? Because sometimes the difference between the end and continuation is something no one can explain.
It was supposed to be just another hike on that August 25, 2005. An ordinary day in the middle of nature in Glacier National Park. Everything was too calm to go wrong. Johan Nader and his daughter knew the environment well. They knew the risks. After all, that place is home to about 1,000 grizzly bears. But they trusted their experience. And that's exactly when everything changed. While he was distracted observing something in the distance, the danger was already close. Silent, massive. A grizzly bear appeared out of nowhere. And this was not just any encounter. With no time to think, Johan did the only thing someone in that situation would do. He put himself in front of his daughter. There was no plan, there was no weapon, just instinct. The impact was immediate. The bear charged with absurd force. In seconds, Johan was thrown to the ground, bitten, dragged, as if he were too light to resist. Every attack felt final. And the injuries were unbelievable. Deep bites tearing through the scalp, punctures in the skull caused by the animal's teeth,
The body torn in multiple places, broken bones, ripped flesh. A level of destruction that under normal conditions leaves no survivors. And even so, he was still conscious. Injured, disoriented, he managed to escape for a moment and fell down the slope. And then came the worst possible thought. If the bear wasn't with him, then it was going after her. The daughter, in panic, fainted. The silence that followed was more terrifying than any scream. Johann tried to react, but his body no longer responded. And then, as if it weren't enough, the bear came back. Another attack, more brutal, closer to the end, more bites, more impact, more destruction. He fell again between life and death, and when everything seemed over, the unexpected happened. The bear simply left, without explanation, without warning. Minutes later, other people found the two still alive. Severely injured, but alive. And maybe that is the hardest part to understand, because surviving a grizzly bear attack is already rare, but surviving with injuries at that level, with a punctured skull, the body practically destroyed, that goes beyond any logic. It's the kind of story that doesn't seem real, but it happened.
Now I need to tell you about the two men who fell from a skyscraper in New York. In 2007, Alcides Moreno and his brother Edgar worked as window cleaners on a 47-story building in New York City. It's a job that seems terrifying just to think about. You stand on a platform suspended by cables hundreds of meters above the ground, moving along the facade of the building. On December 7th of that year, the cables of the platform they were on failed. They fell 47 stories. Edgar did not survive. Alcides was just a few centimeters from his brother and fell from the exact same height, from the same platform, at the same time. But Alcides survived. When he arrived at the hospital, the doctors did something unusual. They called other doctors to see, simply because no one believed that someone could arrive conscious, even in extremely critical condition, after a fall from that height. Alcides went through 12 surgeries. He spent weeks in an induced coma. He lost parts of movement in some limbs, but he walked again. He spoke again. He became Alcides again. The neurosurgeon who treated him said in an interview that, in his opinion, Alcides' case was medically impossible. Not difficult, not rare, impossible. The most accepted theory among doctors is that the metal platform fell with him and acted as a kind of partial cushion. But the specialists who ran the calculations said that alone did not explain everything. A few months after recovering, Alcides went back to working as a window cleaner. If that doesn't tell you something about the human being, I don't know what does.
On August 16, 2012, Eduardo, a construction worker from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, was struck by an iron bar that completely pierced his head, entering through the top of his head and exiting through the middle of his eyes. An impact of approximately 300 kilos, on a trajectory that passed directly through the region of the brain responsible for movement and speech. Eduardo was crouched, wearing a helmet, when a rebar over 2 meters long fell from an estimated height of 15 meters. He arrived at the hospital walking, with the bar still stuck in his head. The doctor who treated him in the emergency room said that when he saw the man walk in with the bar in his head, he froze for a few seconds, something that rarely happens to emergency professionals who have seen everything. The surgery to remove the bar lasted 6 hours and involved a team of neurosurgeons. The risk of permanent damage was high with any wrong movement. He survived without paralysis, with mild coordination deficits in one arm, but speaking normally, thinking normally, living normally.
In 2011, in Australia, a surfer named James was surfing in a known area in no unusual way when a great white shark attacked him. A great white shark attack usually follows a pattern. The animal bites, releases, and comes back.
The first attack is almost always the most lethal because the animal uses the full force of its jaw in that first contact. In this man's case, the shark grabbed him by the leg and hip in a bite that, according to doctors, removed a large amount of muscle mass and came close to the femur. He managed to free himself from the shark, partly because he fought the animal, partly because the shark let him go. Other surfers who were in the water quickly pulled him out and applied improvised tourniquets using surfboard leashes and straps while they waited for help. He lost a lot of blood, a lot. The paramedics who arrived said that normally that level of blood loss in an open environment leads to irreversible shock within minutes. He survived. He lost part of the function of his leg, but he survived. Sometimes luck doesn't come alone. Sometimes it comes with the right people in the right place.
Now the last case, and I warned you, this one would be different. In 1972, a plane with 45 people crashed in the Andes at more than 4,000 meters of altitude in a region with no communication, no roads, no access of any kind. 12 people died on impact. Others died in the following days. An avalanche killed more. Those who survived remained 2 months and 10 days in the mountains without food, without proper survival equipment, with temperatures below zero every night. You have probably already heard about what they had to do to survive. But what many people don't know is the final part of the story. 2 of the survivors, Fernando Parrado and Roberto Canessa, decided that they would cross the Andes on foot to seek help, without maps, without mountain equipment, without training, with bodies that were already malnourished and exhausted after weeks in the ice. They crossed more than 80 kilometers of mountains at extreme altitude in 10 days. When they reached the other side and were found by a Chilean farmer, the man had to get very close to them to understand what they were saying. Their voices were so weak they could barely be heard. Parrado said in an interview decades later that at no point during that walk did he believe he was going to die. He said, "I knew I was going to get there. I simply knew it." When asked if he thought it had been luck, he remained silent for a moment and then said something I never forgot. Luck was the plane crashing where it did and not 15 kilometers further in, but the rest was choice. 8 stories, 8 people who should statistically be dead, and each of them survived for different reasons: temperature, physics, speed of response, brute force, or simply the exact trajectory of an iron bar a centimeter away from the wrong place. What unites all these stories is not a magical explanation. It is the reminder that the human body is much harder to kill than we imagine. And the human mind, when cornered, does things that no science can fully predict. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe, because the next curiosity you need to watch is here.